Did you know that over 77 million Americans, more than a third of the entire U.S. population, live under the rules of a homeowners association? That's right. 1 in 3 homes is governed by an HOA, with boards that can dictate everything from the color of your front door to whether you can park your boat in your own driveway. And yet, surveys show that nearly 70% of homeowners would prefer to buy a house without one if given the choice again. Have you ever felt like your neighborhood watch has turned into a neighborhood dictatorship? If you've ever gotten a fine for a holiday decoration that was up one day too long, or wondered why your HOA fees keep skyrocketing while the community pool stays half empty, you're not alone. Stick with me because today I'm going to share how I uncovered my HOA's hidden agenda and outsmarted them in a way that changed everything for our entire community. When my family and I moved into Willow Creek Estates 5 years ago, it seemed like the perfect suburban dream. Tree-lined streets, a sparkling community park, and homes that all looked impeccably maintained. The realtor raved about the HOA, saying it would protect our property values and keep the neighborhood pristine. We signed the papers without a second thought, excited to start our new chapter. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. At first, it was small things. A warning letter because our kids' basketball hoop was visible from the street for a few hours. Then came the fines. $50 here, $100 there. For things like leaving our garbage bins out an hour past pickup or planting flowers in a shade the board deemed non-compliant. I remember thinking, this can't be normal. We're paying hundreds a month in dues for this. Like so many others, we faced the classic HOA frustrations that plague millions across the country. Arbitrary rules enforced with zero flexibility, like banning vegetable gardens in front yards even though they're eco-friendly and beautiful. Lack of transparency was the biggest kicker. Board meetings were announced last minute, financial reports were vague at best, and when anyone asked questions, we'd get brushed off with, "It's for the good of the community." Fees kept rising, blamed on inflation and maintenance. But we never saw real improvements. The playground equipment stayed rusty, the sidewalks cracked, and rumors swirled about special assessments looming on the horizon. Neighbors whispered about selective enforcement. One family got away with a massive shed addition, while another was threatened with liens over a faded mailbox. Felt controlling, unfair, and exhausting. I started wondering if this was just how HOAs worked, or if something deeper was going on. My breaking point came last summer. We just finished a small backyard project. A simple patio extension with pavers to create a safe play area for our 2 young kids. Nothing extravagant, just something to make family barbecues easier. I submitted the plans for approval, as required, complete with photos and measurements. Weeks went by with no response. Then, out of nowhere, a violation notice arrived. Denied, with a $200 fine for unauthorized construction. When I called the property management company, they said the board president, Mr. Harlan, had personally vetoed it because it might set a precedent. Precedent for what? A flat stone patio? Frustrated, I attended the next board meeting, the first one I'd ever gone to, and that's when the red flags really started waving. The meeting was sparsely attended, mostly by the same 5 board members who'd been in power for over a decade. Questions about the budget were deflected. One neighbor asked why we'd hired a specific landscaping company at inflated rates, and Harlan snapped, "We've used them for years. They're reliable." But something about his tone stuck with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I started digging online, reading HOA horror stories that mirrored our own. Boards awarding contracts to friends or family, embezzling funds through fake vendors, or rigging elections to stay in control. It sounded extreme, but the more I thought about it, the more pieces fit. Our dues were funding maintenance that never happened, and Harlan's company just happened to be in real estate development. I decided to investigate properly. Under state law, homeowners have the right to inspect HOA records, so I submitted a formal request for financial statements, vendor contracts, and meeting minutes going back 3 years. At first, they dragged their feet, delays, excuses about lost files. But I persisted, even looping in a couple of sympathetic neighbors who'd had similar run-ins. When the documents finally arrived, I pored over them late into the nights, spreadsheet in hand. What I found was jaw-dropping. The secret agenda wasn't some grand conspiracy, but it was corrupt enough to make my blood boil. Harlan and 2 other board members had been steering contracts to companies they had hidden ties to. The landscaping firm, owned by Harlan's brother-in-law, charging 30 to 40% above market rates for basic mowing. A reserve study we'd paid thousands for turned out to be copy-pasted from another community, with no real inspection. And the kicker, unauthorized consulting fees paid to a shell company traced back to Harlan himself. Tens of thousands siphoned over years. It wasn't outright theft on a massive scale, but it was self-dealing, kickbacks, and abuse of power that inflated our fees while lining their pockets. No wonder improvements stalled. The money was going elsewhere. This wasn't about protecting property values. It was about personal gain, hidden behind a veil of community standards. I knew confronting them directly would backfire. They'd circle the wagons. So I played it smart. First, I anonymized the evidence and shared it with a core group of trusted neighbors, about 20 families who were fed up. We formed an informal alliance, meeting quietly in backyards and via encrypted chats. Next, I consulted a real estate attorney specializing in HOA disputes, pro bono initial consult, worth every minute. He confirmed this violated fiduciary duty laws, and we had grounds for removal. The outsmarting part, we didn't rush to sue. That would have drained everyone's savings. Instead, we mobilized for the annual election. State rules allowed us to nominate candidates from the floor if we had enough proxies. We canvassed door to door, sharing redacted proof of the irregularities without naming names yet, to avoid defamation risks. Framed it as time for fresh leadership and real transparency. Turnout skyrocketed. Over 70% of homeowners showed up or sent proxies, compared to the usual 20%. When Harlan tried to adjourn early, citing procedural issues, our attorney was there, calmly citing bylaws that required full votes. In the end, we swept the board. Harlan and his allies were voted out overwhelmingly. The new board, made up of everyday homeowners like teachers, nurses, and retirees, immediately demanded a full forensic audit, funded by freezing suspicious contracts. The findings confirmed everything. Over $150,000 in questionable spending recovered through clawbacks and insurance claims. Harlan resigned quietly to avoid charges, and the old management company was fired. We lowered fees by 15% that year, fixed the playground, and implemented open book policies. All finances online, meetings streamed, and term limits for board members. Looking back on this journey, it started with one denied patio and snowballed into exposing years of quiet corruption. The key lessons? Never assume your HOA is acting in good faith. Request records regularly, attend meetings, and build alliances early. Community awareness is everything. Isolated complaints get ignored, but united homeowners are unstoppable. Vigilance isn't paranoia, it's protection. We turned frustration into empowerment, proving that ordinary people can hold power accountable. If the story resonates with you, drop your own HOA experiences in the comments below. The good, the bad, and the outright outrageous. Have you dealt with petty fines, shady contracts, or a board that felt untouchable? Share it. Your story might inspire someone else to stand up. And if you're passionate about fair communities, check out my other video on practical steps for community activism. Link in the description. Together, we can make neighborhoods places we love, not ones we fear. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more real stories like this, and I'll see you in the next one.